These are digital tools for building effective relationships with students. And I wanted to start off with this slide because we had pulled a whole bunch of students and I had turned this into a presentation. And AI determined based on the students' feedback, these were the types of teachers they said they had. So, just to get an idea that building relationships is really important because these are the perceptions that students have of you. Okay, so you can take a look at that if you want. The other things I have on here is to think about having digital meetings or a digital space where students can communicate with each other. And what we have for this is FigJam. FigJam is what's being used to replace Jamboard. And there are some different discussion questions where you can give class compliments. If students have questions about anything, shout outs to people, and students can zoom in here and use it. If you want more information about how to use and utilize FigJam, go ahead and reach out to me and we can set that up. Another thing that we have is the idea of having fun conversations. So use mindfulness strategies. I've linked a whole bunch of them here about sharing experiences, creating a daily routine. All sorts of these mindfulness ideas can be facilitated or managed in a digital space. Another thing to think about is allowing students to create quick slide presentations or to go up on the class and model a nerd talk. A nerd talk is something that doesn't really have a point necessarily, but it's where students can talk about the thing they love the most. So if a student wants to go up there and talk about Fortnite and their skins in Fortnite, you let them for about 3 to 5 minutes and they can present on that. Another thing to look at, I'm going to go, let me make sure I have that open. I do. Okay, so you can have students sort of use digital platforms to learn a little bit about themselves in regards to like college and career readiness or ideas. One of my favorite digital tools is called Thrively. I had my own children take this, and what they do is they take sort of an assessment to see what they are thinking about for skills, what they want to do in the future. So my son wants to be a chef and life skills, and it says his top strengths, his aspirations, some interest he has, and then I had my daughter do it as well. And I'm going to say that they were pretty much spot on. You do have to pay if you want to use this sort of like an LMS, but if you want to set up your students in the class to take this assessment just to see their strengths and some of their areas of interest or need, then that part is free. So it's kind of neat. Going on to this next slide, build opportunities for students to get to know each other. I know we have all of these great group work activities, team building activities, but there are a lot of them that can be facilitated digitally. So you can have students give feedback to each other using Google Forms. And I like to build these with my students. It's very easy, just creating a multiple choice grid question. And then as you discuss with the class what you want for that criteria in rows, and then the amount for columns. And then you go ahead and send this link where they can grade each other and give each other feedback. Another thing is using Google Forms to get information from individual students to build that relationship. If there's something they don't want to tell you, it's kind of like before I used to have a 3x5 card where a student could write me like an important message if they had to, but I didn't like that card just sitting there at the front of the class. So now this is a digital version of it, as well as next steps the student wants you to take. The other thing is I have a slide deck here of a bunch of icebreakers or games that I add as I meet teachers who do some fun interactive things. And then there's a list of icebreakers as well as Slides Go has icebreakers. It doesn't have to be icebreakers as far as the old school idea of doing them, getting to know you at the beginning of activity, just some interactive, quick sort of brain breaks, but collaborative getting to know you brain breaks. So things like would you rather, or the on off game where students say yes or no by standing up or sitting down, playing a quick game of blackout truth or dare. Playing heads or tails, but all collaboratively in the entire class. So just doing really quick activities that are all built in here, and a lot of them have an element of being very, very collaborative with them. So, like movie quotes to live by, and then you can have students get to know each other using a Padlet based on their favorite movie quotes. Another activity that is here is the idea of managing student relationships and getting to know them by figuring out their interests, having inside jokes, building that into sort of your classroom community. So I have a YouTube channel that students just pick the most random, sort of like a reward videos to play, but then you really get to know your students. So this year, my students were really into illusions. And then that was What Does the Fox Say was still kind of cool, Rick rolling at the time. And so you can see all of these interesting inside jokes or things that the entire class learns about because that's our playlist, right? The other thing is really using digital tools to get to know their personality types. Students really love this. So the old Myers-Briggs Ingram test, there's one called DISC, but you can have students take them digitally and then you don't have to grade them or anything, and they can just see their final personality type. The only thing with these is students may need to quote unquote pay, or you'd have to pay in order to keep the results. So tell them to write it down or get it before they're done because you want to have that free version. You don't need to have just these like really out of the box personality types. There are some other activities which I included here where you can build those like personality activities. There's one called Draw a Tree. Students just draw a tree for 2 minutes, and then based on how they draw that tree, there's an interpretation to it. So there's like Facebook quizzes all over the place that basically you can turn into a getting to know you activity, and then they can compare the answers. So for this one, you can take a picture with their Chromebooks and add it to the slide deck, and then they can look at each other's drawings. Or there is one that is built in this one that you can run as a Pear Deck version where students draw the tree on this screen using Pear Deck, and then on the next ones they circle what they did, and that's supposed to tell them what that says about their basic personality, and then they can get together in groups and talk to each other. The final one I really like for personality test is this one called the Adobe Creative Types, and you go through and you take this quiz. I'm the producer, so I like to produce things, and it tells me some stuff about myself. But what I really like is it tells me who is an ideal collaborator with me. So I used to put student pairs together after they took this test, and I'd remember it and have them switch it out throughout the year. The final thing that might be a little bit tricky for a beginning teacher to think about or determine how much that cost is thinking about how they set up their classroom environment. There was a quote that said, "Comfort leads to confidence, which is perceived as competence." So another student, an actual student, says, "I love walking into a class where you just know what type of teacher it is because you want to be there." So here's a teacher who has a Star Wars class. I like this one from a science class, just a small billboard, just something that's funny. It doesn't even have to be big. One of the teachers who was a drama teacher allowed students to come in early or stay late, or if they needed some extra time or had some extra time, they would just draw like creepy pictures on the board. And that's here at APS. So just consider like really letting your own personality shine through in your classroom. So that way your students feel like they really know you when they walk in there. So those are just some ideas for building some relationships with your students and some ideas you can give to your BTs.